what's happening, folks? So for those of you who are following along already, it's very likely that you would have already seen a piece of content on social media somewhere on the Run to Recovery project launch. So what I really wanted to dive into today was a little bit more of a backstory, how the project came to be, the pledge that I've got going on, and how you can be part of the change if that's something that you wanted to be involved in. So hi, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Chantal. My friends call me Sean or Shumba, and what I wanted to dive into initially is the journey that brought me straight into the arms of trail running and the incredible community that revolves around it. So the beginning takes us way back to December the 11th, 2009, which is the day that I would come face to face with a life-altering car crash. So we were driving home on a Friday afternoon and someone ran an intersection at about 100 kilometers plus per hour. Fortunately, I was able to miss the direct impact, but did not avoid being hit on the back rear of the vehicle. And as a result, we rolled multiple times before a lamppost stopped us abruptly. The injuries I suffered were severe and significant and included a compression fracture of the T9, T10, and T11, multiple rib fractures in the front and back of my body, which resulted in a cracked sternum 6 months later, and multiple lesions on my right arm. The x-rays that were taken on arrival to the emergency room were very inconclusive, and I was held in one position for 48 hours until we confirmed that my spine had not been severed. So the biggest relief from this whole experience was that I would be able to walk again, but the road ahead would definitely be long and painful. So doctors' recommendations were to head straight into surgery for spinal fusion or other very aggressive alternatives. So being in my 20s, I had so much fear about making such huge changes, and although it went against everything I was being encouraged to do, I opted out of surgery and went for a more natural option with my healing plan. So for the next 18 months, I wore a back brace, worked with a physiotherapist, and had a pain management cocktail of meds, with a parting letter from my specialist explaining that I was 90% disabled and that I would be in considerable pain for the rest of my life, of which I was until around 2015. That was the year that my spine started to present a very severe curvature. And no matter if I was sitting with a poor posture or standing upright, my back was hunched, and the pain levels were also really, really hard to manage. So a friend suggested the possibility of building strength back in my back from developing my core, and before going to the extreme measures of going back to the specialist, to give exercise a shot, and she felt she knew the right person. So I must admit that when I had my initial meeting with my instructor, I was convinced it would be a solution for me, but I wasn't convinced that it would be a solution for me, but I was willing to try absolutely everything at that point. So Sweat Nation Fitness is a well-known fitness brand in Zimbabwe. Its founder, Barbara Jamga, not only became the catalyst of the building blocks of my full recovery, but has become one of my closest friends over the years that have followed. So my fitness experience started at the boot camp, an awesome outdoor group training, which is full of camaraderie and support and is suitable for all fitness levels and ages. And I quickly fell in love with it, and a fire was ignited in me to achieve as much as I can out there. Within a month, my pain had reduced by a significant 50%, and because of all the benefits that come with health, my life really just started to take such a positive turn. It wasn't long before I approached Barb's to move things up a bit and join her in the studio with a more focused training plan to suit my needs, and bodybuilding changed everything. The curvature in my spine started to correct itself. I was managing pain without any medication. My muscle mass started to increase and develop, which supported my bones. And because of my competitive nature, the discipline and focus I developed meant my performance only got better and better. So the best part was getting a review on my spine to make sure I was not causing any further damage, to be told there was no further degeneration, and that the compression and fracture were surprisingly stable. So this phase of my recovery was something I put all my energy into for the next 2 or 3 years, and I'm so grateful for the foundation that was built through it. Then at the end of 2019, Barb's called me up and said, "Hey, how do you feel about going on an adventure?" Now, side note, throughout the couple of years of being in studio, Barb's and I developed our friendship through the incredible adventures we started to take together, from hiking to fitness challenges and anything that involved the outdoors and a good time. So, of course, my answer is always yes without any hesitation. And the adventure this time was Skyrun Zimbabwe, and we were aiming to do the ultra. Once our entries had been secured, which is always touch and go because Skyrun breaks the internet every single time the entries open, I hadn't run anywhere since junior school, and considering I was still described as disabled, was this even a good idea with my back, or was I compromising all the work that I had done over the years? Have you ever read the book Screw It, Let's Do It? If you haven't, definitely get yourself a copy, but that's exactly the attitude that I took. So I ran my very first kilometer in January of 2020, and with very little knowledge about trail running, downloaded a generic marathon training plan from Google and just went to work. In my mind, a year of training was plenty of time to develop the strength for it, and besides, there was a team of 3 of us. Between us, we would obviously figure it out. So we would run solo during the week, build in a combo of strength training to complement that, and then do our long runs on the weekend together in different areas outside of Harare, where we would train from sun up to sundown. No sooner had we started that COVID knocked on the door, and for the full lockdown period, I ran a track in my parents' garden and did a personal best of a half marathon just running around in a circle. Nothing like building a little bit of mental toughness. At least at the back end of the year, things had reopened and we could continue with the initial plan. It's a year I think back on fondly, with all the experiences that we packed into it. Maybe that's a book for another time. But yeah, there are no doubts in my mind that I was ready for the ultra that year physically. It's the strongest I've ever been, and the prep going into it was really, really well done. However, my emotional and mental maturity did not match it, and I got a DNF in that attempt. I would go on to blame everyone but myself for the next couple of years, but take full ownership of my shortcomings now that I have a bit more experience of the sport and who you become as a result. The defeat of it was short-lived and felt like I had unfinished business in those mountains. So I registered again in 2021 and 2022, and both times couldn't make it because I kept getting injured. I popped both my hamstrings. I damaged my right calf muscle, the soleus specifically. I had a ruptured Achilles, and I had more broken ribs. So it certainly felt like an uphill battle, and on many occasions my doctor encouraged me to consider a different discipline of sport. And then in 2023 I changed things up a bit. So instead of registering for the ultra, I locked into an entry for the challenge instead, and in my mind it was a shorter distance to prepare for, and the goal was to finish that year injury free and without tackling it competitively. It was also the first year of Ranyanga in Zimbabwe, which was the same distance with a lot less intensity with altitude change, so a good pre-sky run event to test the work I was putting in throughout the year, and so I signed up for that as well. It was a lot more solo focused that year, and I really started to increase my knowledge base around hydration and nutrition, and attended all the available talks that are hosted by Grant Mitchell and any other reliable sources I could get info from during that time. I felt a lot more prepared overall going into the first race of the year at Ranyanga in September, and was really happy with the performance and all of the data I got from it, which meant that in my mind Skyrun was going to be breezy, a little bit overconfident in that regard, and took the foot of the gas a little too much between events, and then was slammed with typhoid a couple of weeks out from the race. I probably shouldn't have started, if I'm honest, but I was so driven by the work that I'd done all year, and that this was the 4th year in a row of trying to complete a Skyrun. So I hit the trails. It was grueling and mostly unbearable. There were only 2 things that saved me. The first is that Mark Strathern gently told me to put Humpty Dumpty back together again, and Karen Saunders gave me an anti-nausea tablet while I was going up Zunzwa. Otherwise, I'm not sure that I would have made it at all. And the win that year is I made it across the finish line injury-free. On the day, I was convinced that I achieved all that I wanted to, and that my business was now well and truly finished with the mountains. But hindsight is always 20/20, because now I feel like that was just the very start of everything to come. 2024, a new year, new me, as they say, and I wanted more. The goal now is to see how much better we could do with my personal best, and to get extensive knowledge and support to become a better athlete. And I felt the competitiveness back in my life, but I didn't want it to be ego-driven. So I have a deep belief in the investment of coaching and how much a good coach can enhance your performance in life overall. And I threw all my trust into Emily Horgood, and what a year. It gives new meaning to trusting the process completely. She has an incredible style of coaching, and her approach is very personal and tailored, with a lot of care to the athlete and the seemingly insignificant details. So she's cultivated all of the self-belief, confidence, and understanding of and in myself, and my respect of myself, the sport, the community, and those beautiful moments has increased tenfold because of her love, support, and candor. So my physical self is almost par to where I was in 2020, arguably even higher. But more importantly, the other core elements align with that. Emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, I'm in tune with my body, and that changes who you are as an athlete and how you start to perform as a result. So I've always loved the mountains, but now I just burn for running in them. So my big motivator throughout the year was to look up and look around, and honor all the choices that I made. And it was an amazing race year. My personal best proved that. I had significantly big differences in my time. And as we go into the 2025 season, it's time to tackle an ultra once more. So you'll be glad to know that I also went back for another review at the end of 2024 on Em's request, just to see we're not compromising my back. Turns out my back's completely stable now, and I no longer hold the disabled status. On an internal level, I knew without one doubt that mountain running saved my life in more ways than one. And now we move into how this project has come about. Like I said, mountain running saved my life in more ways than one. What you do know is that mountain running helped me recover from serious physical injury. What you don't know is that when I registered for the first Skyrun event in 2020, it wouldn't only turn out to be the greatest physical adventure of my life, but it would also unlock and unpack multiple layers of my life that needed deep and intentional healing. There was a lot going on at the time. I've been an entrepreneur for most of my adult life, and although I had started a lot of businesses spanning almost 2 decades, with the economy the way that it's been, they were not viable at close of business in 2016, and started the long process of winding them down. Made sense to take a sabbatical for a couple of years and get a normal 9 to 5 and not have all the responsibility. But the challenge with that is, number one, you've been your own boss for so long, and it is highly difficult to be under management. Number two, they know you've been your own boss for so long, so they leverage all of your knowledge and work ethic. So it wasn't long before I took on a more senior role and even more responsibilities. However, with the dwindling currency, my promised package quickly disappeared, and I took the decision to resign from that position in 2019, and a domino effect took shape and filtered through everything else in my life. I broke up with a long-term partner shortly after the resignation and had to eat a lot of humble pie and ask my parents if they mind I move home at the tender age of 35. The breakup was not the heartbreak of it all either. I mean, that was just the realization of all the things I had become as a result of a bad and toxic relationship. I would go on to uncover much deeper heartbreaks in 2021, but we'll save that one for another day too. In between that haze, COVID happened. Pretty daunting to be faced with so many changes all at once, and was in a pretty dark space for a long time. And here's the kicker of the story, right? Throughout every single challenge, heartbreak, bottleneck in my life, I've been a highly functioning addict. In my early 20s, it was a combo of substance and alcohol abuse, and later on I had full dependence on alcohol. And it's a weird conundrum because I was always so proud that I had overcome substance abuse and couldn't admit that alcohol was just as much of a problem. And I'm not proud of it, but I'm not sure I would have got over the substance abuse as quickly as I did if it hadn't been for the fact that I'd run out of money when I first landed in the UK and ended up homeless, sleeping in a Glaswegian park for a couple of weeks out of pride and fear to call my mum and dad and tell them how badly I'd messed up. So going cold turkey in the cold with no food or place to sleep is a sharp reality check on what life can turn out to be if you don't get clean. And the unfortunate truth is that drinking alcohol is so normalized and part of social interaction that it's really easy to hide behind your addiction and darkness while you fit into the norm, right? So I'd already taken the foot off the gas with alcohol in 2023. I'd convinced myself that I could be more disciplined and made a promise to do a lot of inner work and started to heal from a lot of key areas I felt needed help in. So I was trying to really do work on self-sabotage, alcohol, and the alcohol dependence. And I was encouraged to go for rapid transformational therapy with Wasifa Kassim. Although very skeptical of alternative therapy, I agreed. And the therapy uses controlled hypnosis as a tool to extract previous situations that form certain behaviors and characteristics in you as a child. And by doing that, you can identify why and how from an adult lens and go on and reframe those scenarios with a deeper understanding and meaning by creating new and healthy habits and behaviors. In many ways, it was such a relief to have the clarity on those parts of me and do the work to let go of things that were not serving me in any way. We didn't do much work on the alcohol element, but one thing Sifa said at the end of the treatment, which I'll never forget, is don't worry, do the work in these key areas and the alcohol will just take care of itself. And it's surprising to think about how rapidly things started to progress in life and business as a result of changing behaviors and patterns. A few months later, on November the 26th, I knew that my relationship with alcohol was over and that I had much better tools to deal with normal life challenges. I don't know what came first, right? My complete disconnect with living in the darkness for another second longer, or having clarity that I would never do or be half of what I could be if I carried on living in a state of sedation. But what came first doesn't really matter. All I know is it's made me a better person, daughter, sibling, entrepreneur, coach, friend and athlete. And when the time is right, I'll make one heck of a partner to someone. I want to highlight that being sober is not easy. There's still a lot to process and I still have hard days, but those moments are when I feel most alive. And the healing part comes from taking it all to the mountains, where I can leave behind the brokenness and all of the mess. And it turns out this is where I have my deepest moments with God too, especially in those pain caves. He whispers and echoes for hours out there. Somewhere along the way in 2024, he put something on me to do something good with my story and turn all of that mess into a message. To also do something honorable for the special people I've lost in my life because of addiction. Because the harsh truth about this disease is that most addicts feel desperately alone and so deep in their darkness that they just can't find a way out, who normally have burnt all of their bridges along the way and either have no one to lean on for support, or their support channels have little to no awareness of how they can actually help. It's heart-wrenching to know that I couldn't have done more myself because of my own darkness. So this is where the idea was born, the Run for Recovery project, because you're not alone. So here's the pledge. Last year I recorded my running miles at just shy of 1,000 miles. This year that will definitely increase as I take on the Traverse in Chimanimani, the Ultra at Run Jager, and if I get the green light from M, the Ultra at Skyrun. And my personal pledge is going to be $1 per mile towards building awareness to addiction and for the recovery of addicts. Funds will be filtered once a collective decision is made and full due diligence has been done on all the available channels in Zimbabwe, but I'm definitely geared towards a couple that I've really been working closely with over the last couple of weeks. My personal recovery was all a solo experience and included a sporting discipline, but we all heal differently and need to be supported in different ways too. My future goals include the continued development of different facilities with all the tools to support folks as they step back into their sobriety. Let's just call that a work in progress. And this is where you can come in and be part of that change. So throughout 2025, I will be asking key individuals and corporations to match my pledge for this project and to actively be involved as part of a collective mind and body in building and growing awareness around this disease. If a monetary pledge isn't viable and you would be happy to sponsor running supplies or events for the miles that I cover, I would greatly appreciate that support as well. This is something that I'll also actively be documenting throughout my social media channels. And if this is something that you wanted to get involved in, with your permission, I'll also be including you in all my marketing efforts on the pursuit of this project. So as I run the miles ahead in 2025, it's with the idea and belief that if I can just help one person through my story and experience, encourage them to take the steps out of the darkness and back into the light, then we win. So folks, if you want to get involved or you want to have a conversation, feel free to hit me up over in the DMs. We can have a conversation in more detail about how this is all going to operate. Thanks for watching, and for everyone who's supporting already, I really, really appreciate you. Cheers for now.